Welcome to our LinkedIn learning series about the life cycle of a CEO and the evolution of leadership. Leadership isn't static, it evolves and adapts over time. And the challenges that leaders face today are not the challenges that they faced yesterday or will be facing tomorrow. And that's why we're bringing together an incredible set of individuals, those who've lived the role, observed the role from up close, or have studied it in depth, to talk about the concept of evolution, adaptation, and reinvention. And today I'm particularly thrilled to have Alok Maskara, the CEO of Lennox, join us for this conversation. Welcome, Alok.
Thanks, Claudius. Pleasure to be here.
It's, well, Alok, I couldn't think of anyone better to talk about the topic of reinvention. First off, let me say congratulations to your to your fourth anniversary in the role. You stepped into the role, was it Saturday, 4 years ago?
May 9th, 4 years ago, exactly.
Fantastic. Well, and since then you've been, you've been keeping yourself busy and those around you, right? So just for context, everyone here on the call, you stepped into the role succeeding a legacy CEO. Todd Bluedorn was in the role for 15 years, and all of us know from the research that we've done, this is counterintuitively the transition with the highest odds of failure, right? Stepping into a well-run organization that had a legacy CEO leading the organization, yet you're stepping in from the outside in 4 years ago, and we'll want to hear a little bit about that. And equally so, we want to hear about what's been happening since, which is sheer out incredible, right? You're executing one of the most substantial transformations that Lennox has been undergoing in its 130-year history. You're completely reorienting the product portfolio and evolving the leadership team all at the same time. So who better to talk about the topic of reinvention than you? Thank you.
Thanks, Claudius. Just such a pleasure to be here. The 4 year I remember because always around Mother's Day, always around my son's birthday. So today is my son's 24th birthday. So happy birthday, Savir. From my perspective, really enjoyed working with you, and I'm looking forward to the session.
Fantastic. Well, let's start with the beginning. So Todd Bluedorn, 15 years in a row. You're coming in from the outside into a company that's very well run, highly successful over many, many years. What was it like, and how did you shape the mandate to set you up for success when we know from the data how fragile a moment it can be to take over from someone who's, from an organization that's very well run and you may not even want to touch anything? So how did you approach the role?
First of all, I was fortunate that this always been a well-run company.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it's much easier to take somebody that's in the top quartile to the top decile versus if some company is in the bottom quartile trying to get them to average. So I was excited about the opportunity. I followed some simple things. First thing is I always started by acknowledging the success.
Yeah.
Some folks, when they come to be a new role, they try and disparage their predecessor. And for us, it wasn't the case. I genuinely was excited and I wanted to acknowledge everything that Todd had done. So that was kind of the first acknowledged thing. Second is I spent some time on just building on the core capabilities. Because if you think about the organization is not successful without its core capabilities.
Yeah.
And those were his words. So I kind of reviewed those core capabilities, studied those, experienced it myself, and then collectively with the team created a future vision.
Yeah.
So what's the future vision? How's it going to be different? And in fact, I have to give you credit about some of the work you and Spencer Stewart did, which showed that we had outperformed on many, many metrics, but not on growth. We were sort of a little behind on growth. So clearly our mandate at that point pivoted to growth and how do we grow. And finally, putting that all together, we started developing new organizational muscles, not getting rid of old muscles, but just building on what made us successful, add new capabilities, develop new skills, put more and different things onto people to do. Because we had a highly talented group of people, a very successful company. And again, was just delighted to have the opportunity to take a high performance company to even a higher level.
Well, thank you for the shout out. And it's been, I mean, those conversations were incredible. I want to get to them in just a second, but new capabilities you had to build, right? I mean, you were fast out of the gate. You exited Europe in your first year. You simplified the strategy to focus on North America only. Um, Tell us a little bit about where did your conviction come from, and what was some of the pushback that you encountered? Again, you're an outsider stepping into this, right? There could be some organ rejection, slowing things down. I mean, you name it, right? Like, where did you draw your conviction from?
A lot of the conviction came from outside in analysis. What
Yeah,
happens is when you're in a role, you sort of go native after a while. So for me, it was important to take the outside in perspective. And we did some classical work, such as, are these one businesses or two businesses? And we realized Europe had different technology compared to North America. Our market position was very weak. We were like eighth or 10th player in Europe. We were third and fourth player in North America. We looked at the products were very different. Europe was mostly ductless product. US is very ducted product. And we looked at who are the customers, who are the competitors, and came to the conclusion of two fundamental things, that they are very distinctly different market.
yeah,
There's not much in common that helps us get extra scale. So then it's an option to be in Europe or not. Second piece, we came and said, we really don't have the right to win there. The competition there was such, and where we were positioned, it would have required us to invest much more heavily to win in Europe with a lower chance of succeeding and lower profitability. So we wanted to direct our investment somewhere else where we had the right to win. That was North America market. So at that point, we made that decision with the team all together. And once all the analysis was understood and digested, team generally was supportive. But yes, there are always those few naysayers, right? So you just have to work through that. Some can be offset with coaching and discussions and dialogues. Others, you just have to say, hey, the bus is moving in that direction. It's up to you whether you want to be on that bus or not. But I was very proud of the way the team reacted and generally very supportive. And now that I look back on it, kind of 3.5 years later, we would make that decision all day long, every time. It's so much easier for us to fly to Florida and get revenues and growth in Florida versus flying over small businesses in Europe where we had no scale. So I tell my team, we can go to Florida multiple times versus a 10-hour flight to Europe. And
yeah.
that's working well for us.
Save yourself that red eye, right? That's wow. What kind of, I mean, what a thrust that decision developed, right? I mean, you're talking about the proverbial buzz. It really sped up things. I mean, for those of you who haven't checked Lennox stock price, right? I mean, ever since Alok's been stepping in a role, it's far more than doubled on trajectory to triple the stock price in such a short period of time. And I think that strategic clarity early on really fueled that rise, right? And then I think the other piece, which I think you mentioned already, what I've always found fascinating in your leadership and admire so greatly is Lennox is a traditionally been a world champion of profitability, efficient execution, right? Return on capital. Yet here you step in and you say, well, these are all fantastic capabilities, and we certainly don't want to lose any one of them, but we have to add new capability. And I remember early on, we talked a lot about the meaning of a growth mindset, both from a business point of view, focusing more on the top line, driving revenue growth, but also from a psychological point of view, allowing to question oneself, perpetually improve, and setting a good example so that others can follow here. How did you shift that muscle memory, right? This has been drilled into the company for over 100 years. How do you shift something like that for everyone to get along? Tell us a little bit about that. What's that pivot of growth like?
Yeah, no, I think great, great hindsight for us to go back and look at it. I mean, at that point, I was really not that sure. I mean, now if I answer that question, I'll answer it a lot more confidently than if you'd asked this question 3.5 years ago. So hindsight is 2020. I think one of the things I did is I spent a lot of time, just like whether it's any new manager book, including you are in charge now what, books that I've read a few times. I went back and spent a lot of time just going in the field, talking to contractors, talking to dealers, and then came back with a list of things that we need to do and change.
Hmm.
You couldn't just add those things to the existing plate without having the organization thinking it's student body left to student body right.
Yeah.
Because profits remain very important. So we said, oh, profits remain important. We just want to grow faster while making sure that we don't lose the profitability muscle or the EBIT delivery muscle. So we did a few things. We looked at the core competencies of the company, which was very well defined. There were sort of 7 of them. Things like results, accountability, all of that was well done. We added a couple. One was customer experience. So that was sort of missing, but we added that deliberately. Then we added very specific things around innovation. To put it all together, just like you would drive EBIT or accountability, we put metrics behind them. So like customer experience, we put things like fulfillment rate, net promoter score. And then we launched it as a new package and we called it guiding behavior. That's a change in nomenclature, so made it fresh. But we kept our core values.
Yeah.
So it's all about integrity, respect, excellence, and here are the guiding behaviors underneath. That made the organization a lot more powerful. That made the organization confident that we were not changing direction. We were simply tweaking the direction, adapting a little bit to grow more while keeping the core muscle memory intact.
Yeah.
And the results speak for itself. Since then we have definitely doubled our growth rate, and you could look at the markets and relative. We have gained share, we have improved NPS, but at the same time, we have also expanded our margins by 400 basis points. So it's not that we gave up our margin accretion machine. We just added a lot more growth focus to that. And it came down to all about the customer. How do we serve the customer better? And a good execution machine is just much easier to tweak and steer differently. And we're just grateful for what I inherited.
Yeah. Well, let me go a little tactical for a second. Or well, famous chicken egg question, right? Like, what comes first when you're driving that change agenda? Is it the mindset, the operating model, or is it the capital allocation? Like, how do you think about those 3 pieces? And I get asked that question all the time, so I'm happy to punt it over to someone else for a moment.
Well, honestly, those are the 3 legs of a stool. So it's hard to say which one comes first, because you could put a growth mindset, but if you don't put capital behind it, it falls apart.
Yeah.
You could have a really good conviction and set of initiatives and execution, but if you don't have the right mindset and capital, that falls apart.
Yeah.
But in my view, as we looked at it, we, to change the mindset, had to put in some examples. So we announced very quickly that we're going to put a new $100 million factory. That took a few people by surprise. We're like, wow, we're willing to make such a big, bold commitment onto investment. And that's automatically started feeding the growth mindset. But we knew what to do. So the execution initiatives, it wasn't like I'm going to spend 100 million on growth. It was, we're going to do 100 million on this one big concrete initiative, which was data driven, which was needs of the customers, and pull it together. So it's almost like you got to keep going back through all 3 of them continuously and keep raising the bar and keep raising the initiative to make it work. But I think all 3 are important. And for us, it's about, if we as leadership show commitment, if we as leadership show the growth mindset, and if we as leadership truly show execution discipline, then the team will follow. And that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about the reinvention of the strategic direction, but you just raised a team, right? At the same time, you're going through a whole different reinvention, which is, I mean, you're stepping into role. You have a fantastic group of veterans on your team, right? Which brings so many upsides, right? They know the business, they institutional knowledge. I mean, they're the culture shapers, right? For a long period of time, and they also, it sounds like they are the co-architects with you to set this new direction. But then at the same time, in the last couple of years, you've been going through a steady and well thought through process to continue to refresh that team and to reinvent the players that you're leading, right? So tell us a little bit about your thinking on that, on that front, and how it all integrates and reinforces each other.
Yeah, no, great. First of all, just very fortunate for the strong team that I inherited and really grateful. Most of the people in our team, in fact, all the people in our team, they are here because they want to be here. They're
Right.
not here to make money. They're not here to, they've just done very well for themselves and the company, and they want to be here. And some of them took the extra initiative to onboard a new CEO.
Right.
I mean, I can call out so many people: John Torres, Dan Sessa, Joe Reitmeyer. They just took the extra time to say, no, we're going to onboard the new CEO and want to make sure the company continues its success trajectory. So that was one. But as we took this forward, first of all, it started with an open dialogue, strong succession planning. Like day one, I started succession planning for CEO succession as well, although I know I want to be around for longer. So we have a good succession planning process, went through that, and clear conversation with people is how long are you willing to give us time for, right? And as I said, many of them, in fact, all of them like to be here and they want to be here. And then we went through a fairly disciplined process of managing that succession, pretty much one every year and a half. And slowly people started rolling off. In most cases, we were able to develop successors internally, which were great. It showed the employees that they have a strong career trajectory ahead of them. In some cases, we went outside because we do need fresh perspective. We don't want to become insular. We don't want to live in an echo chamber. And we do need external best practices, especially when it comes to growth mindset, customer experience. So we went outside. Overall, it's gone very well. And I'm again coming back to where I stand today. There's still more to go, but we have a very strong team. We maintained our highest ROIC in the industry, and we fill majority of our roles executive level internally through our strong development planning.
That's fantastic, right? Yet at the same time, thinking across all the conversations with CEOs for the book and otherwise, there's typically this moment when you're embarking on such a change agenda for 4 years where the organization just pushes back, right? Not necessarily in a malicious way, but a pushback. So like, oh, what's worked well, we don't want to sacrifice that, etc. Right? There's concern there. Tell us a little bit, like, what did you experience that pushback around, and how can one navigate that period and move through it?
Sure. Yeah, no, multiple things come to mind. I'll tell you one which I've shared
Yeah.
internally often. Right? So part of improving customer experience was to make sure that we were fulfilling their orders at a high rate. So if somebody walks into one of our 250 stores that we have the products in hand. I was in the Boston area meeting some of our contractors, and they were saying how our products are often not on our shelves, so they can't buy
Mm.
it. So I was in the Boston area, so I called my distribution leader and I said, "Hey, just checking in. Is there anything specific about Boston area? Do we need to reinvest?" And the person goes, "No, Boston, we have really good fulfillment rate." Like, okay, how's your inventory position? Inventory position? Oh, we have good inventory position.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm actually standing in your local distribution center. It looks empty. The shelves are empty. And he goes, "Well, I'm looking at my computer screen. The computer screen shows everything is good and the numbers are good." That type of pushback and disconnect was an eye-opening moment for me of
Mm.
saying what I look at the reports and on the screen may not be the reality with the contractor or customer is facing.
Mm.
And that took us a long time to get through, which eventually included us hiring some external help, looking at how we fill our orders, looking at how we deploy inventory. Now we're using AI tools to get inventory deployment right. And we have many new leaders who are more of an expert because historically we were a good manufacturing company. Distribution and store planning was not our core strength. So we brought in people from do that. That's just an example of a pushback that I would mention. In all of these cases, I have the same view. Let's get our boots on the ground. So I personally would go take our team, let's go see the single version of truth, which is what the customer experience is. The single version of truth is not what your dashboard shows to you. The single version of truth is not the fancy PowerPoint I get on my desk. It's what my customer experience is. And creating that mindset, working through that to go through the organizational, any resistance that you have. But proud to say, kind of 4 years from now, we are now seeing NPS improvement across our businesses, fulfillment rate across our businesses, and obviously leads to share recovery and share gain.
Yeah. It's also such a great illustration of what we were talking about earlier, right? Like when your focus is on running a highly profitable company and being super efficient in everything that you're doing, or you're going to provide, you're going to prioritize the dashboard over what the client is experiencing in terms of restocking, etc. Right? It requires a complete different mindset. I think what a great illustration what it means to shift to a growth mindset and how to trickle that down into the organization all the way to the front line and how long it takes, right? I mean, it was not something that you did overnight, right? It required you to incentivize and encourage the right kind of behaviors over and over and over again, right? I mean, tell us a little bit about sort of the importance of repetition in all of this.
Yeah, no, you're right. Often I would say something 3 times and I say, okay, I think people heard it. But then I realized, no, I got to say 27 more times. And there'll still be some people who wouldn't have heard it.
Right.
So we try to make it simple in this case. We said, hey, the 2 things that matter is fill rate and net promoter score. Fill rate and net promoter score.
Yeah.
And we realized they were totally correlated. And we said you can never give up on the returns. So your returns have to be steady. But we are willing to invest in inventory. We are willing to invest in distribution centers. But even today, I had a town hall right before this.
Yeah.
And I talked about net promoter score. I talked about fulfillment rate. Every interaction with me that happens in a small setting, large setting, we'll talk about net promoter score, fulfillment rate, customer experience. And that's a huge part of how we have to change the culture. If we are not focused on the customer, then somebody else will, and then we lose our share. If we don't have the products on the shelf, somebody else will, and then we will not get that sale. So it is the power of repetition, but not just from me. Right. It has to come from the entire team. The whole team has to be aligned on that. And then the results speak for itself. But it takes more than you think. I thought we'll be able to get this through in 18 months. 2-3 years later, I still feel like there's so much more opportunity left.
Right.
The better we can be.
Yeah. So patience is a virtue, right? I've been asking a ton of questions. I just want to encourage anyone who's listening in, feel free to pop your questions into the chat and we'll take a couple of minutes towards the end to address some of them. But while we're waiting for questions to be coming in, Alok, I mean, you're also a product of your own reinvention, right? I mean, you grew up in India, you were a chemical engineer by training, you've been successfully filing patents, and yet you decided to pivot into business leadership, right? And so tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about your own reinvention to date and how you're pushing yourself forward.
No, that's a great question that requires a lot of introspection and reflection. Part of it is as I like to learn. It all starts by having a huge hunger, a thirst for learning.
Yeah.
And I like to combine that with making an impact. So how do I learn and make a bigger impact? As a scientist, I felt like I was learning, we were creating new technology, but they were not getting commercialized. So all my efforts and patents, I don't know if it even got to $1 in sales. So that's what caused the effort to, no, let's go get an MBA. Yes. So try and learn more about the commercial side. That journey continued through as I worked at McKinsey, worked at GE, and where I am now, and I look at this, the exact same 2 things drive me is what can I learn? What do I not know? What are my blind spots? And then how do I convert that to impact? I'll give you an example. Right now, it's all about AI. I'm trying to use AI in everything, To prepare for this interview, I used AI to look at, like, how do we answer questions. To make travel plans, I'll use AI. To do business reviews, I use AI. And then, how do we make an impact? Can Lennox deliver X million in growth, X points of share? Can we do AI better than everybody else? So I think it's a matter of every year at the beginning of the year, I come in and I challenge myself and my team, saying, what if this was our first day at the job?
Yeah.
What are the things you would observe and want to change because there's a better way, or we are not doing it in a good enough fashion? And that continues the learning journey, that continues the journey of making an impact, and honestly keeps it a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So complacency doesn't set in. I mean, you're the one who writes about complacency trap. And that's what we got to be careful of, is not to fall in the complacency trap.
I was going to go right there actually, because you're beginning to enter, your fifth year, right? That's sort of when some of that is setting in, especially for successful companies. But before we go there, we always talk about sort of reinvention as addition, right? As of expanding. Were there any elements where you feel like, oh, sometimes you have to let go of some things, right? Sometimes you have to sacrifice something in order to get there. Anything that comes to mind there where you had to let go in order to make that leap and fully get to that next stage?
We did. And sometimes it's also giving up on strategies that are not working. So it's not just the businesses in Europe that we talked about, right? There are certain strategies that just didn't work for us. I mean, for example, we have 250 store outlets, which are really good, really powerful.
Yeah.
During COVID, we trained everybody not to go there because we would serve them through online.
Yeah.
Now to build that back is more about the proverbial bricks to clicks. I know we don't use that terms anymore. I still like it. Is how do we link those two together? But that means you got to reinvent that and look at a lot more investment in digital while substantially looking at how you distribute product, which is going to be different than in the past. That's got to come back and say, the way we are organized worked well, but if I really want to win in parts and supplies, I got to work something totally different and get rid of the previous organization structure and adopt something different.
Yeah.
That also means that you sometimes accept that we are not going to win in ductless, which is not our core market, but let's have a joint venture with somebody like Samsung.
Right.
So we collaborate with them and accept that we don't have the scale to succeed in that. We don't have the technology to succeed in that. And we can be partners and make less margin than if we were manufacturing it ourselves. But it's the right outcome, so I can focus on other things. We can take that freed up investment opportunity and do acquisitions, do more research, get better heat pumps. So yes, it is continuously a spirit of trade-off for saying, let's be careful on what we do. Let's do one or two things very, very well. And the rest, let somebody else do. Let's use their strength and then work towards winning for the customer.
Yeah. Well, before I open it up to some of the questions we got, you mentioned the complacency trap, right? It's something that you're navigating into, at least the risk of one, especially for successful companies like your own. So yeah, how do you stay honest with yourself? Who are the truth tellers around you, right? Success breeds complacency, and you've been super successful.
Yeah. I was thinking about complacency, and it is my fear that I'll fall into complacency trap. So let's start with that. I think you have made me aware of that. So it's almost like in meetings, sometimes I catch myself if I'm just too complimentary of our direction.
Yeah.
Like, I'm falling in the complacency trap.
Yeah.
What if an external audience come in? So to that extent, we actually bring external audience in the picture. The external audience could be outside firms. They could be people who are new to the team.
Yeah.
One benefit of the succession that's going on in the team is we have new members coming in that bring their own perspective. I need to be careful that I don't overshadow their perspective.
Yeah.
I give them their time and the voice, and we all listen to them because they're going to come with new ideas, new thoughts, which are likely better than what we are doing in the past. So we have to have an open mind towards that. Finally, and you helped us with one of those sessions, my team is that core strength of that. Our team is not always just complementary to each other. We have very open dialogue.
Right.
And some of it we put in formal terms, 360, team interviews, a true red, green, yellow analysis on how we are doing on certain aspect, and then competition. Always look at competition. I listen to all their earnings call. I follow all of them on LinkedIn. I try and go to visit their dealers as much as ours. I walk into Train store as much as I go into Lennox store if possible, just to see and say, oh, every time I go there, I'm like, oh, they're doing this better than us.
Yeah.
So you got to just have an open mindset and the spirit of continuous improvement. So early days, but I'm fighting through it, Claudius. I will not fall in the complacency trap.
That's it. Well, look, we're beginning to hit time. Maybe just 2 more minutes. We had some great questions from the audience. First one was, what are the 3 great skills for a CEO to show exceptional growth? Like, with 2020 hindsight, what would you say now? And maybe equally important, what would you have said then?
Okay. So the question is 3 core skills that the CEO must have.
For exceptional growth, yes.
I think first of all, gotta have the vision. So I think the vision is very important. I think some part of that comes down to is you're not born with a vision. You're not going to come to the job and day one have a vision because that'll be wrong. But the ability to drive that vision is the first one, right? Second thing I would say is taking the team along with that vision.
Yeah.
Taking the team along with that vision. So building a good team, being a good leader, having followership. So that's the second one.
Yeah.
Third, willingness to take risk. You have to be willingness to take risk.
Right.
You're never going to have 100% confidence in any decision you make.
Yeah.
Actually, if you have 80% confidence, you're still doing very good. But you have to be willing to take the risk,
right,
and make sure your team knows that it's okay to fail if you take a risk. It's okay to fail, like don't do stupid stuff, but it's okay to fail. So if you come back and say the 3 things would be is like, ability to develop a vision, ability to lead a team towards that vision, and then having the risk tolerance.
Yeah. I mean, all great points. I love in particular the last one, right? Like how many people get this idea wrong that, strategy being something that you have under control, right? It's by definition in the realm of the uncontrollable, and you're just operating based on hypotheses. We had one more question here that I wanted to bring to you before we go. How does Lennox approach CRM and customer lifecycle management in particular, as you were, and what was that big shift from to when you think about how it was done early on when you stepped in, or even before you were here, and the direction of travel, where you are today and where you're trying to take it?
Yeah, so I will not answer it from a software perspective, right? I mean, from software perspective, it's
Right.
different. I think your question is more on the life cycle perspective.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think first of all, Lennox's greatest strength is our 10,000 contractors or dealers who are very loyal to Lennox and have generationally worked with Lennox. And they have certain core beliefs that we must uphold and make it better. One is that they make more money by working with Lennox. Second for them is we are easy to do business with. We don't have intermediaries in between. We deal directly with them. They can call anybody in the company and we are very accessible to them, right? And third is that we innovate. We innovate consistently, constantly, and we have the best product, the quietest product, the most reliable product. If you take that and now switch back to your question, which was the actual one of the life cycle of a customer, we work with them over generation. If you talk to our contractors and dealers, they would say, I want to leave this company better for the next generation. So better for my daughter who might be taking
Right.
over. Many of our contractors are 3-4 generation. At the same time, the technology is evolving. The investments needs are evolving. They need different types of training. They need more replacement work. So we have to watch their life cycle, work with them throughout that life cycle, and make sure right from when they started a dealership to the time they're willing to hand over the dealership to somebody else, we are their partners. And throughout that cycle, we can give them more. Originally, they would look at us only as equipment supplier. Now I say, no, we can help you with parts. We can help you with ductless. We just launched water heater. How can we make it easier for your customer's life cycle, how you serve the homeowner, how I can be a bigger part of that, or how you serve a commercial building, and how we can support your life cycle. So that's kind of a constant battle. I won't tell you we are great at that, but we are getting better every day.
Right. It's always a work in progress, right? Never quite there, always in search of excellence. But Alok, thank you for, incredibly insightful 35 minutes with you. It's wonderful to see you navigate your own life cycle and see you thrive in it and push the boundaries to higher and higher levels. And thank you for taking the time today to share with all of us what makes you so good at this.
Thank you for having me here, Claudius. Congratulations on what I would call an exceptionally successful book launch. Your book's just very well written. And one reason you and I get along is we're both very data driven. You try and keep it very simple, and you make us, the CEOs, better. So thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.